Hello and welcome to the FATBOSS guide to Drest'agath on normal and heroic in Ny'alotha.
This encounter is all about killing waves of appendage adds whilst keeping damage uptime on the boss as high as you can. Now there's a fair amount to go over, so let's just jump straight into it.
So the boss is constantly healing himself for a massive amount, so whilst you can do damage to him, it's pointless as he'll heal it all back up. The only way to permanently damage him is by picking up an orb from a dead appendage, which buffs you for 30 seconds. After those 30 seconds have ended, you will not be able to pick up another orb again for another 30 seconds. So in short, this fight is kill adds, pick up orb, damage boss, and repeat until he dies. Now there are 3 different appendage adds, all with their own mechanics, and they come in preset waves, and most importantly, they do this on a timer. So aside from dealing with mechanics on this fight, this timer is something that you may need to manage. You may need to find a balance of killing the adds before the next wave spawn, whilst keeping damage up on the boss, especially in these early weeks of the instance. Speaking personally, in our own runs, this was actually done for us and we never fell behind, using the strategy of once you killed an appendage, you pick up the orb and then damage the boss until your debuff drops and then you just switch back to appendages again. The reason that we bring this up is because whilst this could also work for you, there is a chance that it won't, especially if you don't have mythic gear from the previous tier, and if that's the case, you will instead want to damage the boss for a shorter period of time before switching back to the adds, with the goal of killing a wave of adds before the next wave comes in. The boss has an incredibly long enrage timer, it's at least over 11 minutes, so you can essentially go for as long as you want.
Now whilst we could explain every wave of adds, it really isn't necessary for normal and heroic, as you really only need to know their mechanics and which ones you should kill first, so let's move into that now. Melee DPS, you need to focus down the tentacles. On heroic, these have a cloud around them that blocks line of sight whilst dealing ticking damage to any players within it, so you'll want a healer or two to also follow the melee inside. Now the tentacle won't melee hit and instead will spam Crushing Slam, creating a zone that you'll want to sidestep. The tentacle will also cast Entropic Crash whenever the boss also casts it. This deals raid-wide damage that is reduced the further you move from it, so you'll want to move out the cloud as a minimum whenever this happens just to keep the damage safe. The tentacle will also fire out reality tear zones whenever the boss reaches 100% energy. These zones have an arrow indicating where they're going to be fired out, so make sure you keep an eye on that as they do a lot of damage if you're hit. As for range DPS, you'll want to focus on the Maws. On heroic, these have an aura around them that apply a stacking healing absorption shield on you, which at 4 stacks makes you hostile to other players. This is why melee should avoid attacking them. Aside from that, they spam Acid Splash at random players, dealing a burst of damage to them and players close to them. As a result, you want to be loosely spread so the damage doesn't spread. The Maws will also cast Mutterings of Insanity when the boss does. This is a debuff applied to a random player that slows them over the duration and stuns them and anyone within their targeting circle when it expires. If this is on you, then move away from others, and the stun can be dispelled by your healers afterwards. Now when the boss reaches full energy, the Maws will cast Spine Eruption, which spawns a series of rings around them that deal massive damage if you're hit. If DPS are max range from these Maws, however, you'll never even need to move from it. Now once the tentacles are dead for the melee and the Maws are dead for the ranged, you'll then want to swap to the eyes. These guys mind flay, slowing and dealing damage to random targets, but this is interruptible, but more importantly they'll cast Void Glare whenever the boss does. This targets a random player and after a relatively long cast, they'll fire a beam towards them. This deals massive damage to players hit. You'll want to keep a very close eye on the boss and the eyes when this is cast and move into a safe location. Last of all, they'll cast Errant Blast when the boss reaches 100% energy. This will spawn multiple red targeting zones around the room that do a lot of damage to players that are hit by them. Just be quick to move from them if they spawn under you.
So tanks, as none of these tentacles need to actually be tanked, you're probably wondering what your job is. If nobody is within melee range of the boss, he'll start dragging random players towards him, dealing massive damage to them whilst also stunning them. So one tank needs to be at the boss at all times. What you'll need to do, however, is taunt swap every time you're debuffed with Volatile Seed. This creates a zone around you whilst dealing ticking damage for 10 seconds. When it expires, it will explode, dealing moderate damage to all players and appendages in the zone whilst also debuffing them, increasing the damage they take by 60% for 15 seconds. So after the tank swap, you want to choose an add to explode on whilst the raid moves away from you. Which add is best to debuff is kind of debatable, we just recommend hitting multiple ones if possible. Afterwards, you'll then want to move back to the boss ready to taunt off the other tank when they're debuffed. Now aside from that tank debuff, the Entropic Crash which is shared with the Tentacle, the Mutterings of Insanity which is shared with the Maw, and the Void Glare which is shared by the eyes, we did mention the boss's energy. This goes up every time an add is killed, and once he's at 100 energy, he'll cast Throes of Agony, which is just unavoidable raid-wide damage over 10 seconds that your healers will just want to out-heal, ideally using a healing cooldown each time if possible. But that's all you should need to know for the majority of raid groups, just stick to your DPS priority and find a balance of DPSing the boss versus DPSing the adds if necessary.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like to know more about this encounter or just refresh your mind ready for your raid, then do check out our written guide over on Wowhead. A link for that can be found in the description. And we'll catch you all in the next guide.
Thanks for watching.
Take care.